why don't we say we have a look at their teams if the matchup is ready to go on ahead? Because as we were saying earlier, there was some really, really fun Pokemon to see. And one that I'm going to say I love seeing it is that Goodra, but at the same time, it's one of those Pokemon that I also, despise to see, especially when I'm playing into it, because it's one of those Pokemon that is so bulky. And Tomoyuki has brought one of those cores where it is basically protects the king, as some people say, whereas Goodra is the king and every other Pokemon around it making sure that thing isn't knocked out. Grimmsnarl, its favourite friend there, be able to set up both of its screens, and with Shell Armor, it can't be crit through those screens, and with Terra Fairy, you're taking really, really good hits on some of the most powerful Pokemon. And then a supporting cast of Ogerpon, Rillaboom, Urshifu, Tornadus, Pokemon that we know from many, many top cuts across regionals, many, many top cuts across any tournament you can think of. Most of those Pokemon are there in some combination, so it's good to see that they're coming along with Goodra to make sure that there is a stand-out ovation for this lonely, lonely dragon.
Yeah, and of course, we already talked a little bit about the team before, and we are going to get into it a little bit more in a bit, but I also want to take note of Tomoyuki's achievements here. Of course, 2023 Victory Road September Challenge Champion, 2022 Japan National Top 4, 2017 World Top 4, and 2017 OCIC Top 32. So a very, very accomplished player here. Definitely going to be a threat for his opponent, Michael, to deal with. But going back to the team, as you just mentioned, the Goodra is, we've seen Hisuian Goodra a little bit. Like, it's personally, it seems to pop up every now and then. It's not necessarily a Pokemon that personally I feel like I would prepare for. But it is nice to see it on stream once again, and this Goodra is actually playing Flash Cannon as opposed to the Heavy Slam, which we usually see on like this Body Press Shelter setup with the Terra Fairy and the leftovers, and of course the Rillaboom supporting it with a little bit of Grassy Terrain recovery, the Grimmsnarl supporting it with the screens, all of that good stuff.
All that good stuff, and as you're saying about having that Flash Cannon, Goodra is one of those Pokemon where it wants every move, it wants every tool in the box at once, and you're stuck with those 4 moves at one time. Like, Flash Cannon's good because you can hit those Pokemon with a lower special attack stat, but if you face something like Flutter Mane, where it's quite bulky on its special side compared to its physical side, you can't hit it with Body Press, so you're having to rely purely on does my Flash Cannon knock it out. Goodra has a really high special defense stat, so you probably win that matchup there, but it's just one of those things where you have to think about it over and over again. Some like to run Life Dew as well to try and replenish themselves without having to have leftovers, some want Rocky Helmet. So it's just nice to see that Tomoyuki has gone with this mode that they feel is very, very good. Covers most bases. You got healing from leftovers, you got special damage from Flash Cannon, physical from Body Press, and also going for Shelter over Acid Armor. And this is something that a lot of players debate on. It's like, who goes with what one? I prefer Shelter just because I think the animation is a lot cooler, but some people also do it for that very, very minuscule chance with like something like a Alolan Muck trying to pick up on like Imprison plus Acid Armor. But of course, that's enough for Tomoyuki's team, because let's see what Michael is bringing from their perspective, which is something that's quite familiar to some of us, because Chien-Pao plus Dragapult from that World Championship Finals has come back, but the rest of the team has changed up from what we saw at Worlds, making it a bit of a fresh face, but also not being too different from what Michael knows is strong and can do very, very well with.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, Chien-Pao Dragapult was also a combination that Michael played at the World Championships in last season. And aside from being our current world finalist, he was also at Malmö Regional, he did go 6-3, and Utrecht Special Event, he made top 32. And of course, at the Bochum Regional Championships, he made top 8. So, for a player who just started playing, like, I believe a year ago, already a lot of accomplishments on the board here for him. And of course, aside from the Chien-Pao Dragapult, there is now that Indeedee, the Urshifu Tornadus, and the Hisuian Arcanine. And this Hisuian Arcanine we've seen dominate quite a bit in the past few months. So, excited to see it back on the board here as well.
Yeah, it's exciting to see it back, and Arcanine as well, like Goodra on the other team, is one of those Pokemon that wants everything at once. Like, you want to go with a powerhouse like a Choice Band set, or you want to go with like something that's bulky with Citrus Berry, but also all of these moves you want. Like, you want Will-O-Wisp to try and further lower the stats of the opposing Pokemon, but it's just everything at once wants to be on that Pokemon there. But it's nice to see that Michael has picked up one of those ones that we saw did very, very well at I believe it was the Gdansk regionals just gone, where it goes a bit more supportive while having the 3 other moves completely, headcanon onto that damage. Gets a bit shaky when you're not running Protect because there's so many Pokemon either being a ground type or teching for a ground type move. Means that Arcanine can't protect them and is kind of forced into the Terra to make sure it can take a hit from them. So it's going to be nice to see how Michael does decide to work around that, because there is already that high horsepower coming out from Rillaboom, which is putting that pressure on, as well as Urshifu does water type attacks, but we'll have to see what goes there, especially if you tear into that water in front of Rillaboom. It's just going to hit you with a grass type attack if you get that prediction right. But yeah, these are 2 very, very strong players on the field, so they'll be predicting each other left, right, and center, so let's see how that goes for them.
Yeah, I think, the Arcanine here could be threatened a little bit by that high horsepower from the Rillaboom, of course, because, usually before Arcanine became so popular, we usually saw, like, U-turn on a Rillaboom, but it doesn't surprise me that more people are starting to go back to, like, high horsepower to cover for something like an Arcanine, especially, and also, playing the Terra Fire on Rillaboom, all that stuff. And also, Michael, he has this Indeedee on this team, which is, of course, able to set up a psychic terrain to get rid of grassy terrain on Tomoyuki's side, and which also means, he's not playing, like, Aqua Jet on Urshifu or Sucker Punch on Chien-Pao, and we are going to get into Game 1 here, as we are going to see an Urshifu Grimmsnarl lead here for Tomoyuki, and the classic Dragapult and Chien-Pao for Michael.
So it's that classic lead, and as always, it's one of those things where if you have Chien-Pao, Dragonite, Chien-Pao plus anything that's a super strong physical attacker, you don't have to fix it in any way possible. And Mikhail must think, this is my best lead into the possible outcomes on this side of the field here. It can do big damage. Goodra is the only thing that really stops this composition, because if you Terra Fairy and you get those screens up straight away, then what are you going to do to it? It's got its screens up, it's got its shelters going, and it is Terra Fairy, so you're forced into those ghost type attacks, which aren't doing as much damage the more and more boosts you get on it. But see what goes from this. There is a Detect opening up this game here, allowing for a bit of protection on this Urshifu.
And Grimmsnarl is going to set up what I am going to assume is a Reflect here, since it is facing a Chien-Pao and Dragapult. So, both of Michael's Pokemon are not going to be able to attack into that protecting Urshifu, but Icicle Crash is going to go into this Grimmsnarl. Takes it fairly well, does less than 50%, still in green health. So, we have one screen set up now here for Tomoyuki. He can obviously still decide to go for a light screen. But, Michael's team is mainly physical, so you might not really need it. He only really has Indeedee and Tornadus as its special attackers, which, both aren't really going to threaten that Goodra too much if he does have it in the back. And now, this Urshifu could potentially go for a U-turn to, switch into the Goodra there, but Michael going to opt to switch out his Chien-Pao and bring in the Tornadus that I just mentioned, meaning that, potentially could go for some Bleak Wind Storms, as the Dragon Darts is going to come out here, going to do a nice amount of damage to that Urshifu, but, with the Reflect helping Urshifu tank this so well, that is still a choice band Dragapult, so I'm actually surprised how well the Urshifu took that, even, with Reflect up, as the Surging Strike going into the Tornadus, which is playing the Rocky Helmet, means that the Urshifu is going to take a lot of damage, but survive on just 1 HP here for Tomoyuki.
Yeah, so on that 1 HP is going to be very, very good for this Urshifu, if it maybe decides to switch up to that Aqua Jet to get a bit of damage down on that Tornadus, but at the same time, it can also switch out into something like this Goodra that we just saw in the back flash up for a second, and then you can get that Terra Fairy ball rolling. You might maybe want to wait if you're Tomoyuki for something to get knocked out to bring the Goodra in, because then you guarantee you're getting it in on the field with the Terastization into that Fairy type. And with Mikhail's Dragapult being choice lock to Dragon Darts, it's either forced to switch, or it is forced to switch. If you have 2 Fairy types in the field, it's not doing anything anywhere. So it's going to be a very nice thing for Tomoyuki to get up. We do see Michael makes the option as that switch and brings back on into the Arcanine, and it is able to get Intimidates down, which is pretty beneficial given how low HP this Urshifu is. But it is going to go for that Detect to make sure it is nice and safe on the field no matter what goes into it. As you see, Tornadus goes for a believe that was the Bleak Wind Storm going in. It was the Bleak Wind Storm. It does get the hit down, does knock out the Grimmsnarl here. As Grimmsnarl goes for retaliation with the Spirit Break and gets that knockout, meaning there is no speed boost going up that side, no speed drops, no pesky anything, but it does allow something like this Checkout to come back in, which can really benefit the Arcanine, which is a super strong Pokemon right now.
Yeah, Arcanine coming in here means that it can threaten this Urshifu that just went for a Protect with an extreme speed. And yeah, Tornadus did go down without setting up like a Tailwind, but you know, maybe Michael doesn't really need it here, is going to bring in his Chi and Pow now. So I'm pretty sure that at this point, you know, Michael can easily knock out both of these Pokemon on Tomoyuki's side. And I wonder if, you know, the Urshifu surviving at 1 HP might have not been great for Tomoyuki, because he didn't manage to bring in that Goodra for free and then just go for a Terra Fairy, you know, and wall that Dragapult that was locked into Dragon Darts. So, you know, he has these two Pokemon on the field now, but they're both, you know, very low HP, and both of them could get knocked out by, you know, an extreme speed, or, you know, the Chi and Pow is probably the fastest Pokemon on the field here, if I'd had to guess, and it's not some crazy build, and the extreme speed is going to go into this Grimmsnarl, which is going to get knocked out, of course, and let's see if the Urshifu went for an Aqua Jet, and it did go into that Arcanine, and it is actually just going to take it out. Wow, that Chi and Pow, I mean, of course, Hisuian Arcanine is 4 times weak to that Aqua Jet, and the Icicle Crash here is going to knock out that Urshifu. So now it is going to be Chi and Pow and Dragapult versus Goodra and Rillaboom here.
That's going to be a rough one. Like, just seeing that Aqua Jet get knockout, like, it's one of those moves where, because it's so low in its base power, you don't expect it to get knockouts like that, even with the 4 times effectiveness. But Chien-Pao does give off and Chien-Pao does take off away because of its ability affecting everything but itself on the field. And it does allow for a triage of knockouts there. So we had 2 things go down. We get 2 Pokemon coming out. We had 1 going down on Mikhail's side. And Tomoyuki really has a bit of control of the field right now, because you have to play that mind game of, if Mikhail locks into a Ghost type attack to try and circumnavigate the effects of a Terra Fairy, you can just avoid that Terastization and you take a few hits a little bit better from this Chien-Pao. But then if Chien-Pao calls the lack of Terastization, you can then go for a Sacred Sword to get those super effective attacks off. So everyone's kind of on this wild ride, this massive roulette of what damage goes where. It'd be nice to see how both these players navigate it. If Tomoyuki calls it right, then it could be a very good situation for them. If we see Mikhail call it right, that looks like it's going to go in his hands, because you can just pretty much ignore this Rillaboom and get rid of it later down the line, given its moves aren't the strongest into either of these Pokemon with their natural typings.
Yeah, I feel like the Dragapult coming in here for Michael instead of the Arcanine staying on the field means that he does have a little bit of an opportunity to really deal some big damage to the Scooter before it gets up a shelter. But of course the Reflect is still up, so, you know, that is going to reduce any physical damage on for Michael, and we are going to see our first Terastization here, which is going to be that Dragapult. Wouldn't be surprised if he decided to go for maybe just a Phantom Force here, or just a Terra Blast actually into the Goodra slot, and Tomoyuki also opting to go for a Terrestrialization here, which is going to be that Rillaboom actually, so deciding to go for the Terra Fire, possibly in order to resist, you know, those incoming Icicle Crashes. But yeah, I'm curious to see if Michael maybe opted to go for a double up into the Goodra slot. The Terra Blast is going to go fire into the Goodra, is going to do a lot of damage. That is a Choice Band stab with Chien-Pao supported Terra Blast, and the Icicle Crash is going to be enough to take out this Goodra. And the Rillaboom, of course, still has an opportunity to go for something like a Wood Hammer here, which is going to come out into the Dragapult slot and is going to knock it out. So yeah, the Goodra going down without clicking a single attack, but now I'm not sure if this Chien-Pao can take out the Rillaboom in time.
It's going to come down to a battle of fates here. That was one of those other pieces of information that we could have seen in those mind games that everyone's playing of who Terra is and who hits what, in the fact that if you tear her away from that dragon ghost typing into that pure ghost typing on the Dragapult, you then gain a bit more of a weakness to those grass types which you lose your resistance. And now we come to the situation of Chenbao has a few moves that can do quite well, and with being Lash Out as well, doesn't have to rely on playing any mind games with a Sucker Punch, as well as not going to rely on ISO attacks. CMS is good how it does those. It does get the knockout and confirms the game going a little bit further in the hand of Tomoyuki, with Rillaboom being the one to save the day, as opposed to that Goodra that everyone normally will put the pressure onto in this matchup. And this just shows really well what these teams do, where you play that Protect the Kin, you either stop Goodra from getting knocked out, or you have it be such a threatening presence that they have to knock it out, and the other Pokemon just kind of do their own thing around it, and Tomoyuki expediting that very, very well to get that first Game 1 win.
Yeah, that I'm curious to know, like, I mean, obviously I don't know how either of these Pokemon are trained, but you know, Tomoyuki's Rillaboom is Assault Vest, so not like Miracle Seed, so I'm curious to know, as like, you know, with the Wood Hammer, would it have knocked out if the Chi-Power wasn't there? I'm guessing it would have, you know, since Dragapult, when it did go for the Ghost Terrestrialization, it lost its Dragon type, and so the Wood Hammer is a neutral attack, of course. But yeah, that would be interesting to know, of course, going into Game 2. But yeah, as you mentioned, that Goodra just being such a threat, almost forcing Michael to double target it before it gets up, you know, a setup like a shelter. And then allowing the Rillaboom to just knock out both the Dragapult and the Chi-Power in the end game. So yeah, really well played by Tomoyuki there. And now, I don't know, what do you think Michael will need to do to adapt into Game 2?
I don't think there's much he can do. I think he just went with the best he could. There was just one of those games where mind games were one of the strongest tools they had, where if you allow the Goodra to get set up, then you can't knock out the Goodra. If you then get rid of the Goodra, you then allow everything around it to do big damage. And I think it also just came down to that awkwardness of damage rolls weren't doing the best they could. Like the Urshifu living on 1 HP allowed the Arcanine to be knocked out a lot easier later down the line, but it also meant that that Tomoyuki, even though they wanted that free switch, didn't get access to that free switch, meaning that Mikhail was also playing to the fact of like, okay, there's like 2 fresh faces to go into still, like there's something in the back I don't know, as well as trying to get rid of these 2 in the front. But we'll have to see in this Game 2 now coming up what they do opt to go for to try and change the pace. Will we see Mikhail play a lot stronger into that bulkier core? We do see a change up straight away. Chien-Pao makes a return next to Tornadus. But of course, Tomoyuki will also want to bring some new tools along, brings their own Tornadus next to its best friend Urshifu, and everyone knows where this goes when you see this combo. You either Tailwind and do big damage, you either Aqua Jet, you Rain Dance, do big damage. All we know is something is getting hit hard with a very, very powerful attack. Even if not, you could get a Tailwind up to make your Goodra slightly faster, so those shelters are going up a little bit quicker later down the line. Just use all that goo and slime to slip and slide around that victory field. But let's see how Tomoyuki does go for this into Mikhail's new lead.
Yeah, I was wondering before if maybe Michael was going to bring the Tornadus in the lead in the second game. Wasn't sure, or I wasn't expecting Tomoyuki to switch up his lead as he did, but 2 Tornadus on the field means, of course, that both of them can set up Tailwind, as you just mentioned. I don't know if it'll do the Goodra any good, but yeah, Terrestrialization here for this Urshifu that, of course, could benefit from the Tailwind very, very nicely, is going to Terrestrialize into that Water typing, and we are going to see the Tornadus on Michel's side set up that Tailwind, and Tomoyuki's Tornadus might set up a Tailwind as well. Yes, it does. So Chi-Power probably going to be the next Pokemon to attack here. Going to go for an Icicle Crash into this opposing Tornadus and just knock it out. But, you know, Tornadus, once it's set up Tailwind, most of the time it's done what it needs to do. You know, if you live, you can also set up a Rain Dance, but who knows if you need that or not. So we are going to see Surging Strike come out here into this Tornadus, actually, which is going to be enough to knock it out with its 3 hits. But, of course, Urshifu also going to take some good damage from that Rocky Helmet.
And the Rocky Helmet is doing itself its dividends, because it is saying, you're getting these 3 hits off on me, probably getting a knockout, but I am then just sitting here and taking the hits. You take damage as well, and indirect damage is so powerful on these Pokemon like Urshifu, where normally, because they're so fast, they can just kind of knock things out, won't worry about damage. But now the damage is going off, but at the same time, Now it's 1-on-1 apiece. Both these players in the same position where you've gotten rid of the Tornado, so that there's no more pesky tail. Like, Tailwind is done, it's dusted, it can't be set up any later in this battle. But now it comes down to that case of you got rid of supportive Pokemon. Now two of the main pieces of this team can come on in. For Tomoyuki, if Goodra comes on in, you get that case of, oh, you know, I can now get my setup going, and a lot of your Pokemon are physical attackers. I get those shelter boosts going and going and going. You can't really touch me bar a crit coming through. But then with Michael, obviously, these Pokemon aren't weak Pokemon, they are strong Pokemon, and they can easily break through that speed barrier as well as both these Pokemon here faster than that Goodra, and now we're seeing that same tail coming out again. Do you double up the Goodra to get rid of it, threat be gone, or do you get rid of Urshifu to make sure that threat is gone and then actually allow Goodra to get those boosts up to come down to who they fear the most in this current game state?
I think something that Tomoyuki has to keep in mind here is that, you know, he already went for the Terrestrialization on his Urshifu, which means this Goodra cannot go for a Terra Fairy to be immune to any incoming Dragon Darts. And also, he doesn't have a Reflect Up from his Grimmsnarl. So this Dragapult here right now is more than free to just fire off either a Dragon Darts, a Terra Blast, a Phantom Force, whatever it wants to do. Goodra is going to go for a Protect this turn, as we are going to see another, or we are going to see an Aqua Jet here into the Chien-Pao slot, going to do a little bit of damage, nowhere near enough to knock it out, as we are going to see Dragon Darts going to be able to KO that Urshifu. You know, Choice Band, Dragon Darts, it hurts, especially when there's a Chien-Pao next to it. And the Goodra not taking any damage this turn thanks to the Protect, but this, I think, is a great situation for Michael here. Rillaboom is the last Pokemon for Tomoyuki. We're just gonna set up the grassy terrain, but that recovery might not be enough facing up against this Dragapult and Chien-Pao without the help of Reflect or Terra Fairy.
It's not going to do any good here. Like, without any of those boosts, it's not taking the hits. With the Terrestrialization worn out, you know you're taking super effective damage from these Icicle Crashes. You could hope that Icicle Crash misses, and you know sometimes you have to hope that Lady Luck is on your side of those situations. But we're in that game state now where, like, Dragapult is hitting both the targets with Dragon Darts. It's already got its Chien-Pao next to it. It's doing as much as it possibly can, and there's nothing you can really do to stop that side. You can only worry about what is happening on the other end of the field. But yeah, it just is too powerful of a matchup here, and this is why Michael brought it to the World Championships, because it has all these powers that you have in a Chien-Pao Dragonite core, but you don't have to rely on too many different things to get it going. And Dragapult is just so threatening right now, and you can maybe try and get rid of it. Chien-Pao does switch out, so there's going to be that maximization of offensive presence, but it is still a strong Pokemon with spread damage. Zarkanine comes in and is going to weaken both of these Pokemon on their physical side. Have to see what goes on from here. As you see Dragon Darts come through, do minimal damage. Another one goes through onto that Rillaboom, does a bit more. See what comes out as there's a high horsepower, possibly predicting the switch on that slot there. But Goodra does get his shelter up, so now it's becoming a bit of a problem. But is it enough for a problem to stop these two behemoths?
Yeah, the Intimidate on the Rillaboom, I think, is more than fair, and the Goodra setting up the shelter, of course, might be a little bit scary, but, you know, if Michael can just knock out this Rillaboom and maybe get just a little bit of damage onto this Goodra, you know, of course, he still has the Chien-Pao in the back, which can also attack it with Sacred Sword. So, yeah, I think as long as Michael just plays this carefully and doesn't make any great errors, I'm pretty confident he can win this game too here. You know, the Arcanine, of course, is can be hit by something like a high horsepower, but the Rillaboom, you know, is intimidated, so it's not going to do a lot of damage to this Dragapult. But the Flash Cannon from the Goodra, you know, it is not playing Heavy Slam, it is playing Flash Cannon. I'm actually curious to see how much damage that would do to this Dragapult.
It is going to have to see how much it does, because, you know, as we were saying earlier, it is one of those things where it's not known to be carrying Flash Cannons, and it's not really a known Pokemon, you're not going to do calculations for it. And with it being a very offensive-orientated Dragapult, it's not going to have too much bulk invested into it. And knowing you've got to get rid of that before you can get rid of anything else in the field means that it's going to be that is going to be the main target. That's going to be the pressure base. We do still have a shelter though, so it is going to be getting those buffs going. And when you can't be crit, you don't have to have any fear of being hit by a critical hit move. So Tomoyuki could be relying purely on that, just getting the damage, but getting the defensive buffs up and up and up, relying on grassy terrain and on leftovers to get to full HP, and just have no worry in the world, as nothing can really touch you unless they get a really high roll.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You know, if you can't get crit, then you know you're more than free to drag out games for as long as you want. But can this Gudra really stand up against this Arcanine Dragapult and also the Chien-Pao in the back? My guess would be that it can't, especially as we mentioned before. Cannot go for a Terra Fairy, so Dragon Darts is going to hit it very nicely, and also, you know, a Flare Blitz from Arcanine is also going to do neutral damage, as Michael decides to go for the Terra Water here on this Arcanine. Yeah, does not want to be hit by something like a Body Press, and Gudra actually gonna go for a Protect here. Also more than fair, get that, you know, grassy terrain and also leftovers recovery. You're gonna want to recover as much health as possible in this end game if you're really trying to still cheese your way out of this.
Yeah, there could be that cheese, there could be that way, but of course, with Mikhail going for one of those supportive Arcanines, it does carry that Will-O-Wisp, which does mean if you do hit the Will-O-Wisp and you get the burn, that is meaning that all those defense buffs you're getting for that Body Press, Body Press is going to be weakened, so it's not really doing too much. And also, even though you got that leftovers, you've got grassy terrain for the time being, you're not going to have it all the way through, and Will-O-Wisp will also start chipping away at that with a burn. So that is probably one of the tools you can go with. If not, just go for pure damage and hope you burn with the Flare Blitz. But looking at that measly little tick of damage there from Dragon Darts. And there's the Will-O-Wisp, so Mikhail now has that fail-safe in action where it's like, you know, you're not doing the maximum damage, but we'll see how much this does still do. It still does a chunk, even when burned. Body Press is such a good move.
Yeah, but all three Pokemon on the field here not doing a lot of damage, but Gudra still dishing out the most of it in that one Body Press against this Arcanine. Yeah, wouldn't be surprised to see maybe another Protect from the Gudra here to recover a little bit, but looks like Tomoyuki is contemplating whether he just wants to go into Game 3. Might not be as optimistic about this Gudra as maybe we are feeling. I'd still like to see it play out. Let's see how many KOs and Gudra still get, but of course there is still that factor of maybe also a little bit of information gathering, you know, how much does the Sacred Sword from the Life Orb Chien-Pao in the back really do, all that stuff, but Tomoyuki is gonna lock the forfeit in here, which means we are gonna go into a Game 3.
Going into a Game 3, and as much as I as well would love to have seen the little Gudra that could, I think in that game state it just comes down to, do you rely purely on getting to +6 defense and then just sweeping through things? It's a bit of a long run to take it, and you got to think in that time you got Will-O-Wisp chipping you down, damage chipping you down, and just, you know, everything is going through, and with only grassy terrain there for a few more turns, it's not really going to be the best benefit to rely on it. So a bit of information gathering, going through to that Game 3. I don't think there's much you can change again, because it's just one of those comps where both of them revealed all their tools of either you just completely remove what's in the first three Pokemon to allow Gudra to have a safe come in, or the other way around for Mikhail is you completely remove everything so Gudra has nothing to protect it really. And let's see what they go for in this Game 3. Like, do you think there's going to be any changes, or are they just going to try and go with clockwork and see what happens from here?
Yeah, I'm actually like a little bit surprised we didn't get to see the Grimmsnarl again, because, you know, Tomoyuki, he did lead with the Tornadus, and all it really did is set up Tailwind, and then it went down, and I don't really know how much value that gave him in that second game, because I felt like in Game 1 he really pressured Michael really well, and then now in the second game the tables were almost turned completely. So now going into this Game 3, I'm really curious to see what the leads will be, especially I think the Tornadus did way more work for Michael than it did for Tomoyuki, especially with like the Rocky Helmet doing damage to that Urshifu without even attacking it. Rocky Helmet, great item against Surging Strike, of course. Will we see the Gudra again? I hope we do, but let's see.
Yeah, I hope we have it. Like, it's just one of the Pokemon, like, as I said at the start, I just dislike seeing it doing so well, because it either, you know, does nothing when I play it, or does everything I play into it. It's it's like to have that narrative of just a Pokemon that was just kind of forgotten until like this generation, just kind of just like, oh, I'm here, I can do big damage. But let's see if it isn't going to be forgotten in this Game 3, because our players are ready to go. So is it going to be Guja returning? It is Arcanine making the lead this time alongside the Tornadus, with the game 1 lead coming on through from Tomoyuki. So maybe thinking it's the same case of just that isn't broken, don't fix it, bring a lead that did well, bring it back did well. But we do see in that team preview of the status screen there is no Gudra. So maybe trying to play a bluff here onto Michael, saying, you know what, I'm not going to have anything I'm not going to have any information for you. I could have Gudra, I might not have Gudra, and even if you do, you didn't have to play that mind game of target down the Gudra to stop her getting those defense buffs. Have to see how there is this adaptation going into the next game. Will it be the same thing? Try and knock something out, maybe go and aggregate into Arcanine, or try and bluff the Arcanine Terroring. Anything can happen in this turn here, because it's just, get screens up, you could do anything here.
Yeah, and as we just saw, the Ogerpon in the back for Tomoyuki means that, he did not bring the Gudra at this game, maybe deciding it's not the way for game 3. And Michael gonna go for a Terrestrialization here on the Arcanine, is gonna Terra into that Water type, meaning that it is going to be taking any Surging Strikes from this Urshifu very, very nicely. And of course, if the Surging Strike would go into the Tornadus, it would take Rocky Helmet damage, but Urshifu instead deciding to go for a Protect this turn. Tornadus going to set up the Tailwind there, and I believe Grimmsnarl did not attack here. It is going. Oh yeah, it is going to go for a Thunder Wave here into the Tornadus, meaning that it'll slow it down a little bit, and of course there will be that chance for a full paralysis anytime now. And Arcanine is going to go for what I am assuming is going to be a Will-O-Wisp into that Urshifu, but thanks to the Protect, it is not going to get burned this turn.
Thanks to that Protect, it's not going to get burnt, and thanks to also this Thunder Wave being thrown out everywhere, it could not get burnt whatsoever or have to be hit with anything super effective from that Tornadus. And this is one of the things that Grimmsnarl does so well as well, where if it's not setting up screens, it is just being a nuisance by not allowing the opponents to attack or have the most of their damage going on through. So Tomoyuki is now in a very good position where it relies a bit on luck, but at least you're faster than this and you might not be hit by it. Actually, if he does decide to switch out though, not going to try and risk anything, as we do see the Ogerpon coming in, which is going to be very, very good if a Will-O-Wisp did go into that slot.
Yeah, it is going to be good if a Will-O-Wisp goes in there, but what if something like a Bleak Storm comes out, that Grimmsnarl going for, I'm going to assume it is the light screen maybe to cover that incoming Bleak Storm, but yeah, no, the Tornadus, I believe, maybe might have missed its Bleak Storms there that turn, and Arcanine maybe going for a Will-O-Wisp again into the Ogerpon, which of course does not affect it since it is a fire type.
It doesn't affect it, and being one of those really good fire types as well just means it's going to be doing anything of whatever presence it has. And with its ability to terrestrialize as well, you can take away the flying weakness, you can take away that slight little bit extra you'll take from a fire type attack because of that grass typing, meaning that you can put a lot of pressure down, especially now that Arcanine has terrestrialized. It is now going to be weak to these grass type attacks that come out from Ogerpon, and at +1 attack, it's not something to try and just dance around, because you know that it could go for a Swords Dance at any moment if you call the switch correctly and go any further. But Rillaboom is going to make its appearance in this game, which is going to help out even more, even if that Arcanine does choose to switch, or if something comes in for that slot where the Tornadus is, because he can do a lot to that Tornadus, even as a flying type.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we might see Rillaboom switch in here for Tomoyuki, and maybe the Ogerpon just go for a Terrestrialization, get that attack boost, and then go for a Grassy Glide, which of course is going to be at +1 priority, so is not going to care about the Tailwind, as it does knock out that Terra Water Arcanine. So Michael losing his Arcanine that turn, losing his Terrestrialization that turn, but of course Tomoyuki also went for his Terrestrialization that turn, and the Bleak Storm is barely going to do any damage to this Grass type Rillaboom and the Ogerpon, but a speed drop on both of these Pokemon for Tomoyuki, which, I mean, Michael still has the Tailwind on his side, so, and might not matter that much, and he does still have the grassy terrain up, so he is going to get a +1 priority boost to both Grassy Glide on the Rillaboom and the Ogerpon. But now Dragapult coming in here, resisting both the grass type attacks and fire type attacks from these Pokemon. Maybe not that bad of a situation for Michael after all, but he does have to keep in mind, of course, the Grimmsnarl on the back.
does have to keep that in mind, because if you bring that in, the Dragon Darts doesn't hit into it. But Tomoyuki also has to have that in the back of the mind. If you bring in the Grimmsnarl, the smart targeting effect of that Dragon Darts will mean that it will hit twice into the Pokemon that doesn't switch. So it's now one of those back and forths again, like in terms of the mental game of, if I switch, then there's too much damage going to this thing. If I don't, then I'm getting some double damage off. And if you see them like a double Grassy Glide into that Dragapult, I can do very, very big amounts of damage given the Grassy Terrain boost and the +1 from the ability activating on Strategization. As you see, Dragon Darts goes into the Ogerpon and doesn't get the knockout there. And we'll see how much that was a lot of damage. Ivy Cudgel coming up through and gets
oh my god!
The Dragapult normally would possibly take that as a dragon type, but there's all the combinations of damage boots here. As you see, the Woodhammer gets a knockout as well.
Wow!
Everything is dropping. Normally see a focus sash there, but Michael going for that life orb, meaning it does get destroyed by a Woodhammer in grassy terrain. But this is turned around completely. Tomoyuki has the front foot again in this matchup.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that's the game just right there. I mean, this Tornadus is still at full HP and can go for Bleak Windstorms, of course, but it is paralyzed. And, you know, Tomoyuki still has a full HP Urshifu and Grimmsnarl in the back. But I honestly did not expect that Ivy to knock out the Dragonpult, and Michael is just gonna lock in that forfeit there for the game 3. But wow, that game, I felt like we were just in the middle of it, and then suddenly it was just over in one turn like that. Wow.